Okay, Mayor, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Clerk Van. Call the regular meeting of the Citrus Heights City Council for December 9th, 2021 to order. And earlier we had a closed session and there's 3 items on there. I was going to ask our city attorney to report out on those that he could.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to report out on one of those items, and that was related to the national opioid settlement. So a motion was made by Councilmember Bruins and seconded by Vice Mayor Middleton. And that motion was to direct me, the city attorney, to register the city of Citrus Heights to join a state and national opioid settlement for lawsuits against an opioid manufacturer, Janssen, and 3 pharmaceutical distributors, McKesson, Amerisource, Bergen, and Cardinal Health. And the vote was 5-0. I'm reporting that out. Thank you, Mayor.
That was item 3. There's no reportable actions on the closed sessions, items 2 and 4. And with that, I'd like to ask Jeannie Bruins to lead the flag salute.
Please rise. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, visible with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Van, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bruins,
Present.
Councilmember Daniels, Councilmember Schaefer,
Here.
Vice Mayor Middleton, and Mayor Miller.
Here.
This meeting of the Citrus Heights City Council is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. This meeting is closed captioned and live streamed at citrusheights.net. Tonight's meeting replays on Monday, December 13th at 9 a.m. on Channel 14. This meeting can also be viewed on the city's YouTube channel.
Thank you, Amy. And with that, move on to approval of agenda. Approval.
Second.
Motion by Daniels, seconded by Bruins. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The agenda is approved. With that, we can move on to the next item.
Next item, number 4, is the selection of mayor and vice mayor.
Okay, well,
I move that we nominate Vice Mayor Portia Middleton to serve as mayor this coming year.
there's a motion by Bruins, seconded by Daniels to nominate Vice Mayor Middleton for mayor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Congratulations. And with that, do we want to take care of the vice mayor before we change positions? Any,
I move that we that I nominate Brett Daniels for vice mayor.
Second it.
motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
If that motion fails, another motion. I'd move Tim Schaefer.
Second it.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. And with that, I don't think we're going to get up and move, but you might, just a quick recess to change the titles. And did you bring your gavel?
Can I borrow yours?
I'll rent it to you. No, It's been here, I think, since day one. So congratulations, Portia.
You're not gonna move? Let her be in the middle?
Next meeting, we're going to stay in,
Oh, okay.
stay in place.
That's good.
Fine then.
Yeah, a little easier logistically. Now, you know, I'm going to try and run things for a couple items here, but it's all yours. Thank you, Haley and Amy.
Next item, please.
The next item is presentation number 5, proclamation recognizing City Manager Christopher W. Boyd for his service to the city of Citrus Heights.
Thank you. So yesterday we had a wonderful celebration honoring Chris and what he's done for our community. And we have a proclamation that we'll deliver to him at a later date. And we'll also have an opportunity to officially recognize him at a later time. Next item.
Next item is presentation number 6, employee service recognition.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Chris Boyd, the city manager. About twice a year, we bring before the council in the community recognition of our longest serving employees. And so really, it's our pleasure to really for the second half of this calendar year to bring forward some of our employees who served with us for quite some time and are incredibly dedicated, hardworking folks, and we appreciate them so much. So it's our honor to bring them forward before you tonight. So I think we'll start with our Director of General Services, Regina Cave.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Regina Cave, General Services Department. It is my pleasure to recognize 3 of our General Services staff members who have reached milestones this year. So our first up is Christopher Myers. He is celebrating 20 years of service here at the City of Citrus Heights in official city capacity. Chris joined us in 2001 as a senior facility and grounds maintenance worker, though he actually has been a longstanding fixture of the city dating back to 1985 when he supported the Fountain Square Nursery and eventually lended his expertise and experience supporting the city in its early years of incorporation. Chris's experience in buildings and facilities placed him as a top candidate to lead the construction of the Citrus Heights Community Center. He was promoted to Facilities and Grounds Supervisor in 2007 and named Project Manager of the Year for APWA. And he also led the construction of the 29,000 square foot LEED building known as our Community Center. In 2012, he led construction of the Sylvan Community Center and the Sayonara Center, assisted with the design construction of the new City Hall, as well as managing the controversial demolition of the old City Hall. A challenging time, sensitive feat of balancing staff needs and ensuring minimal impacts to public services. Again, Chris's selection of the prestigious American Public Works Association, APWA, SAC Chapter Manager of the Year Award in 2016 is a testament to the respect and regard he has in the field and in the Sacramento region. So congratulations, Christopher, in your 20 years. You are a great asset to the city. Next up is Armando Velasquez. He is celebrating his 15 years of service with us. Armando is celebrating, again, 15 years of service this December. He joined the city as a maintenance coordinator for the General Services Department in 2006. And in 2009, his position was reclassified to construction maintenance inspector. And then again in 2017, he was promoted to construction maintenance inspector supervisor. Armando has been a key and valuable asset to the city, leading efforts in improving not only the appearance of our public rights of way, but the safety, use, and operations of our infrastructure. He has made countless contributions to Citrus Heights, most notable his community service program, which many on this call today have attended over the years. Armando single-handedly developed and manages a program where he organizes annual events with community service clubs and resident volunteers to improve the city, cleaning creeks, planting flowers and trees, and spreading bark, to name a few. His events garner hundreds of attendees, volunteers, and contractors, all happily willing to lend a hand. Armando truly has a following. As supervisor, Armando also oversees our emergency response program. He coordinates with Caltrans for many of our cleanup efforts, especially along the freeway and along Antelope Road. He co-developed a manual on creek and habitat preservation and collaborates with our police department on homeless issues on a regular basis. Armando is also known for his hard work, his dedication, his can-do attitude, and his community relationships. But Armando does have a shortcoming. He is a Dodgers fan. We give him a lot of heck for that, but we still think he's spectacular. So thank you, Armando, for all you do, and congratulations on your 15 years of service. And lastly, but not least, we have Michelle Sario celebrating her 10 years of service with us. Michelle joined us in 2011, originally over in the the community center where she still serves us today. She is events and community center technician as of 2013. And at the community center, Michelle is responsible for bookings and scheduling of clients, as well as at the Sylvan Community Center. Michelle led the city team coordinating the city's signature event, Sunday Fun Day at Rush Park, for 8 years, as well as 6 years involvement with the annual Red, White, and Blue Parade. She continues to work with Sunrise Park District, assisting with the Hot August Bites planning and development, and attend Sunrise Marketplace meetings. Last year, the city participated in the Great Plates Delivered program, providing 3 meals a day, 7 days a week to our seniors in the community. Michelle was instrumental in keeping the city's food providers on target, providing weekly schedules, as well as invoices and vendor contracts. The overall project was a huge success for us here in Citrus Heights, all thanks to Michelle's skills. In her spare time, the mother of 2 loves to ride horses and actively participates in regional horse shows, continuing to win awards and jumping. Michelle, thank you for your support and contributions to the community and to the city of Citrus Heights, and congratulations on your 10 years. And next, I will pass it to our Administrative Services Department. Bill, are you on?
There we go. I'm Bill Zanoni, Interim Administrative Services Director. Mike Pettinato is celebrating 15 years of service with the city. Mike actually has the longest title of any position in the Administrative Services Department. Mike is the Senior Database and Applications Analyst in the Information Technology Division of the Administrative Services Department. Mike began his career with the city back in September of 2006 as a database and applications analyst, and he was promoted to his current position in November of 2019. Mike is our database expert, and he's responsible for supporting all of the city's software applications across all of the departments. Mike's responsible for activities like maintenance management and permitting, document management, citations, alarm billing, police scheduling, all of our financial reporting, payroll and budgeting software systems, human resources, business licenses, and there's more than that. But Mike plays a key role in all of our system upgrade projects, and he's always willing to tackle another project. One of his upcoming projects will be the new time and attendance reporting system that the City Council just recently approved. Mike's work ethic, dedication, and his great attention to detail has been visible in all the work that he does. And that has resulted, we believe, in a more efficient city. I think Mike sleeps with his computer next to him because Mike sends and responds to emails at all hours of the day and throughout the night. So I'm not sure when Mike sleeps, but Mike is definitely a valuable member of our team. And so Mike, congratulations on your 15 years of service with the city.
Hey, that's wonderful. All of our employees have been such a tremendous value to our city, and I really appreciate everything that you've done so far. Any other comments from council members?
I just want to acknowledge, I see Patrick Liu up there as well, and he's been in IT for as long as I can remember, and I think he has a 20-year anniversary this year, and I can't tell you how many times he's bailed me out when I've need technical computer support. So thank you, Patrick, for that.
Okay, next item, please.
Our next item is comments by council members and regional board updates.
Okay, Mr. Daniels.
Thank you very much. In November, I had the privilege to attend the bench dedication at San Juan High School with the mayor. The dedication was for Deputy Mark Stasic, who died in the line of duty while working in the Sacramento Sheriff's Department. And he attended San Juan High School as I did. And it was good to finally be able to get that opportunity to create a memorial for him. I hope that and challenge the kids at San Juan High School to make sure that the bench receives the honor that it deserves, and that nothing happens to that bench along the way, hopefully. I did get a chance to attend the Christmas tree lighting, but unfortunately not till towards the end, but everybody seemed to have a really good time, and the crowd seemed to be a pretty good crowd. So it was great that we were finally able to get back into the swing of things like the Christmas tree lighting and get the community out and get them together. And the final thing, we did kick off the Toys for the Troops Kid Toy Drive, the 19th annual toy drive up at Sunrise and Greenback in the Sprout Shopping Center. If you get a chance, it'll be open through Sunday, December 19th between 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Drop off a toy and we'll get it to a kid of one of our moms or dads that's serving in the military. That's it.
Vice Mayor Schaefer.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been very busy. On December 2nd, I attended sat on the board of the Sacramento Cable Television Commission. We took care of some housekeeping items. We approved the new employee handbook and the like. And then on today, actually, I also sit on the Sacramento Public Library Authority. I'm delighted to say that we announced our new library director. We did a nationwide search for a replacement for Rivka Sass, which will be very challenging to replace. She did a phenomenal job in managing their 593 employees and 28 branches, including our own Sylvan Oaks library here. And I'm delighted to announce that Peter Coyle has been appointed as her replacement. He comes to us from a library system in New Jersey. He also managed the Dallas library system, which is a very large library system of 73 branches. I look forward to what was really impressive about him is when he came to the interview, he was born here in Sacramento, and he had his original library card from when he was 5 years old. He's just the right man for the job here. It goes well beyond just having a library card, but he's got just a wealth of experience. I think that he's going to serve us well here in the Sacramento area. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I had a wonderful time with my family. And also a person of our family is Jewish, and they celebrated Hanukkah from the 28th to December 6th. And I hope the Jewish members of our community enjoyed that holiday as well. So that's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Bruins.
Thank you. Well, yesterday we had a regional sanitation board meeting that was unusually lengthy. In fact, I was still on my phone when I showed up for the city manager's retirement luncheon yesterday. The project or the subject that took so much time was a report by about our biogeneration facility project, which is a for-profit project that Regional San is going to be developing to convert waste to fertilizer. And it's a great project, but the subject that took so much time was whether or not to include a community workforce and training agreement with it, which is basically providing the ability for union employees to have a step up over non-union employees. And so that generated an hour and a half worth of discussion. I voted against it because I felt that union and non-union employees alike should have equal opportunity, but it did pass. And then today, it was my delight to once again, after many, many years, to attend the Teddy Bear Lunch, which is put on by the folks over at Lakeview Village Mobile Home Park, which is our largest mobile home park in Citrus Heights with over 500 homes in it. It's more of a community than it is a mobile home park. And they're very active. And so I was joined by several members of our police department, including the chief, Alex Turcott. And I would say our police department walked away with close to 400 stuffed animals that they will be giving out throughout the year to children that may be involved in a call, either domestic violence or some other call where the children would be upset. This is a very comforting thing for them to have. And it's also a great bonding mechanism between our police department and children. We'll also be using some of them next week as we give out presents to the kids on Sayonara. They come out from all the buildings and we have tons and tons of teddy bears to give them. So they will be well used. And I just want to thank the committee at Lakeview Village who put this on again this year, and what a great, tremendous service they provide to us. That's it.
Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add on, I was also there at the Teddy Bear Luncheon, and besides the bears, and that's always gives me a warm feeling and gets me in the holiday spirit. You have 60 moms preparing a potluck for you. So food was great. I took a little bit of everything. It's just amazing. So great way to kick off the Christmas season. Last week, Brett brought up, we had the tree lighting. I think we had about 800 to 1,000 people here. It was just very festive. Everybody was just having a good time. And I did too, helping to light the Christmas tree. This Tuesday, along with our chief of police and our communications team, we visited Meal Pro. They're a company that now occupies the old Lucky Derby card room. I hadn't been in there since it was a card room. And they're looking to expand. They provide really good quality paired meals like some of these other companies, and they're based right here in Citrus Heights, but they're shipping all over the country now. And so it's taking off for them, and we're very happy to see a new business in Citrus Heights succeed. Attended the retirement luncheon on Wednesday. Staff put on a great event honoring Chris Boyd as our city manager, and still with us as interim, but I think we're zeroing in on a new city manager here. Today, attended the Sacramento Transportation Authority meeting, and after much discussion, there was a motion to put the SAFSA renewal, which was the SAFSA stands for the Sacramento Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Program, which is expiring and it's going to have to be renewed. And the only way to do that is through election. We talked about this earlier. I think we're going to talk about it more under staff report, so I won't get too detailed. But after discussion, it was agreed to put the renewal on the June ballot. They're still seeking a legislative solution. I don't know if there's any way around the law of this having to be voted at 2/3 majority to pass, but we'll talk more about that under department reports, I think. So with that, that's all I have to report.
Thank you. And lastly, I missed the tree lighting ceremony, but that's because I was at the Cal Cities board meeting where we approved and adopted our budget and set our policy goals for 2022. I also attended a SACOG meeting. It was a long and lengthy conversation about the federal transportation funding that's coming to California and how we're going to try to allocate that to local jurisdictions. So I'll be having more updates about that later on. And also I want to remind our community that Cookies with Santa is happening this Saturday at 3 p.m. And the first 300 children that show up at the community center will get a picture and a free gift from Santa. So I encourage all the families out there to come out and visit Santa and get a picture. And with that, we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public comment, and members of the public may address the council on any item, on any agenda item of interest to the public and within the council's purview, or on any agenda item before or during the council's consideration of the item. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. If you wish to address the council during the meeting, fill out a speaker identification sheet and give it to myself, the city clerk. If participating via Zoom, you can use the raise hand function or *9 from a telephone to indicate your desire to speak. When your name is called, I will allow you to unmute your microphone to speak. I do have one written comment that to read tonight, and it looks like we also have received one from the member of the public. So do you have a preference? You want to start with the member of the public?
Take the written one first.
Oh, the written? Okay. We received this public comment from Alfred Sanchez. He said in December 2020, Citrus Heights Mayor signed a proclamation declaring December 21st as Homeless Persons Memorial Day. Along with cities across America on National Persons Memorial Day, we will once again hold a vigil to remember those who died living on our streets. Anyone who would like to attend, please contact Alfred Sanchez on Facebook, also known as Snackman Citrus Heights. And then I will go ahead and call the member of the public, Melissa Hayden. Come up to the podium, please. Thank you.
Hi, I am a concerned citizen here in Citrus Heights. I do a lot with our city. You may or may not have heard of me. We do a lot on our Lost and Found page through our animal rescuing. A lot of us have come forward and we rescue the animals ourselves. Also, I help with, certain crimes or something on Citrus Heights Alive and just try to help our community as much as possible. One of our biggest concerns is a lot of our rescuers, including me, that are not 501c in this town. We've lost so much by losing the TNR program. We would definitely, if anything, I know a shelter is out of budget right now, but if anything, we can get some kind of grant or process to get the TNR rolling back in our city. It would help a lot of us dramatically in getting these animals preventative, basically maintenance, keeping our community at a not overflowed with these animals on our street. We have cats, dogs that are just completely breeding out of control. And unless we get that TNR program, a lot of us citizens are either going to have to help them ourselves. Yes, our animal control is amazing. Do not get me wrong, 100%. They do things that I couldn't do. I can honestly tell you that. But our city has had an influx, and especially with COVID shutting down and our vets offices being overflowed, normal low-income citizens aren't able to fix their animals. They're unable to stop the population. So if we can work together, get that TNR program, whether we get another officer involved for hopefully a full-time officer involved, that would be great to just be there to help our trappers. We do have many trappers who work on their own, who do this on a daily basis, that I'm sure would help the city as well if we had resources to go to get these TNRs done quicker. Do have two subjects. That's the first one I'd really like to bring. The other one that our city does not have, that I've always been super concerned about bringing people to this city. This city to me is amazing. I used to come here from El Dorado County because of the Sunrise Mall. You guys had, all of us from up there would come and spend our money here in Citrus Heights. But our Sunrise Mall, as you know, is a little bit, we're working on, I know you guys are working on it. So what can we do to bring a new influx to our budget? How about holistic healing? It not only would help our homeless population who are self-medicating and our mental conditions, stuff like that, with CBD stores being legalized here in our cities. Whether you guys want to move that forward to have THC legal, I'm actually opposed to THC, but I know it works for some people. I'm more into the holistic herbal CBD and getting people to quit doing drugs and help them with their mental stabilities, whether it be PTSD, seizures, Parkinson's, the whole nine.
Thank you.
Got it?
Thank you.
I do not have any other public comment cards from the audience, and I do not see any raised hands.
Next item, please.
The next item is consent calendar. We have items 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Mayor, can we pull item 16, please?
Any other items to be pulled?
I'd move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, motion by Miller, second by Bruins. All those in favor?
Aye.
The opposition? Carries. Next item, please.
Next item, item 16, the subject is Sylvan Soil Remediation Project Award of Contract, and a recommendation is to adopt a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to execute an agreement with Innovation Construction Solutions for the Sylvan Soil Remediation Project and finding the project to be categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
You know, I was just hoping our city attorney could better describe succinctly what's going on with this at the old Sylvan Middle School site.
Yeah, no, be happy to, council. So Madam Mayor, members of the council, the city put out a request for proposals to do soil remediation related to the former Sylvan Middle School site, and it was necessary for a future residential project. As the council will remember, the developer, in this case is Woodside Homes, entered into a purchase and sale agreement with the city earlier this year. And over the course of their due diligence period, they discovered a small environmental discrepancy that we do need to remedy in order to move forward together with the residential project there. So for the council's background, the materials found were slightly over the allowable threshold for residential development. Those levels, were so small that had it been a commercial development, remediation wouldn't have been necessary at all. So accordingly, staff is requesting the council tonight to award a contract to the lowest responsive bidder to perform the remediation so that we can move forward with this development at Sylvan Corners. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions? Go ahead.
So once the property is cleaned up, how soon can we resume the escrow process and moving forward with liquidating this property?
Immediately. Woodside Homes has been in contact with us. They'd like to do it literally within the next 30 days or less.
So once approved, how long do we think this will take? When will we see this taken care of out there at the site?
I understand the contractors will be out there in January and they would finish it within a matter of weeks.
Oh, perfect.
Did I move approval of the item?
Second?
Motion by Bruins, second by Miller. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Next item is public hearing. Item number 19, the subject is urgency ordinance urban lot splits and 2-unit residential development related to SB 9. There are 2 items for recommendation: adopting an urgency ordinance of the City of Citrus Heights, adopting changes to Title 82 and Title 106 relating to the implementation of Senate Bill 9 for the creation of urban lot splits and 2 residential units per lot, and adopt a resolution authorizing the addition of a new application type referred to as urban lot splits to the master fee schedule.
Good morning, or good evening, Council. Allison Bermudez here with the Planning Division with this item. As mentioned, this is an ordinance and resolution presented all in because of SB 9 that was signed into law earlier this year. So let's talk about what SB 9 is. It has been in the news quite a bit, so you probably have heard some of it. But it really was a law that was passed that requires us proposed housing developments that are containing no more than 2 residential units within a single-family residential zone be considered ministerially without discretionary review or hearing if the development meets certain requirements. So there's 2 parts to SB 9. One refers to the land division. So single-family properties can be divided into 2. And then also then the development of 2 homes on each of those lots. So 2 parts to SB 9, all related to housing. This is one of the many laws that were signed by the governor earlier this year in response to the housing crisis. So what's important with this one is SB 9 has those 2 parts, but they can be used together. So someone could take their single property, divide it into 2, and then also place 2 homes on each of the subsequent lots. So tonight, we will review the amendments to the municipal code for 2 sections. One would be the subdivision section that's related to the lot splitting, which is the Title 82, and then also the required amendments to our zoning code, Title 106. We are presenting this as an urgency ordinance. It was signed very late this year and it goes into effect in January. So typically an ordinance would go before a planning commission and go through review. But because it was presented to us so late in the year and becomes effective, we felt it was urgency matter to get this on the books. We already have several members of the public inquiring about using it on their property. So we did want to get this recorded so we could move forward appropriately. And as mentioned, as part of this, there is a new application process to implement it. So the other action is to adopt the resolution to add the urban lot splitting into our master fee schedule. So what type of properties will qualify under SB 9 in Citrus Heights? So that's for single family zoning districts. So for us, those are properties that have the designation of RD1 through RD5. So RD1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would be eligible under SB 9. The property can be vacant or it can have existing housing on it. So different portions of the law for each one, how it would be divided based upon the existing conditions. There are some exclusions in the law. There's quite a few that are excluded. Many of them don't pertain to properties here. They have provisions for coastal zones and fire zones and so forth. But for Citrus Heights, the properties excluded would be any property that's in a conservation easement. And we do have some of those. And then properties that have that are designated historic are also excluded from SB 9. There are some conditional exclusions, and I call them conditional is because they are excluding development in the 100-year flood zone, but they did provide some mitigation measures that you could meet to use your 100-year flood zone property. So flood zone property and property in floodway is excluded unless it can meet certain measures. The law did provide some protections for rental housing to keep our rental housing stock available. So any units developed under SB 9 may not be used as a short-term rental. So those are your less than 30-day rentals that are used usually for transit occupancy or something like that. So any property developed under SB 9, the units could not be used as a short-term rental. And existing units, they can't be altered or demolished in 2 conditions. So you can't remove a house to build new houses if that unit that is being removed or altered is deed restricted. And what that means is if it has an affordable housing component where the occupant is meeting certain conditions for reduced rent, or there's some other deed restriction like that on the property, that home cannot be altered or demolished. And then the big one is that if that property has been occupied by a tenant for within the past 3 years, that it must remain as is. And so that is to prevent housing from being taken away from our housing inventory and have people do work and then people lose their place to live. So those are 2 provisions of also properties that cannot be used for SB 9. The law did allow us to apply some objective standards. So while it has some very clear things, what you can do that we must follow, it did give a narrow purview for us to provide objective standards. And if you recall what that is, those are standards that we could apply that really there's no wavering in. They are requirements and they don't take any discretion. So they're written as clear, they're a number, they're something that really there's no decision has to be made to. It either complies or it doesn't. So we did include in this proposal a couple objective standards under that. But then again, as we saw this provision when we adopted the ADU regulations update a couple years ago, the legislation did include a however statement that says we can apply these objective standards. However, if our standards preclude them from being able to construct at least 2 units of 800 square foot each, we cannot apply our standards. So we do have standards in place, but if applying those standards eliminates that property from being able to utilize SB 9, we cannot apply them on the project. So as I mentioned, there's 2 components to SB 9. So therefore we have 2 new entitlements that we're introducing through the planning division. One would be what we're calling an urban lot split, and then it has to do with the division of the land. So the single lot that can be divided into 2 lots. So that will be processed as an urban lot split. And the difference between this and what you're used to seeing parcel maps that would do the same thing is, if you remember, this has to be ministerial decisions. So these applications will be reviewed in compliance with the Subdivision Map Act, as well as the standards of the law, but they are reviewed, let's say at staff level, and they don't go to a public hearing. So it is different than a parcel map. And then again, on the zoning side, the 2-unit development. So this is where a property can construct 2 single-family units on a single property. That is new for us, so we did have to update the zoning code to include those standards for the 2-unit development. So to talk about urban lot splits, SB 9 provides these standards when we are reviewing these applications for the urban lot split. As I mentioned, they have to be ministerial decisions. The property that is proposing to be split does not have to meet our minimum zoning standards. So let's say an RD5 zone, the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. So a traditional parcel map application would be reviewed in compliance with our zoning standards. Under SB 9, those minimum lot standards do not apply. The only minimum lot size required is that it has to be at least 1,200 square foot. So each lot would have to be minimum of 1,200 square feet. The lots, when they're divided, they have to be of similar size, but they can be no less than a 60-40 split. So that prevents a lot from dividing and making an unusual lot split or an unusual design. These are really meant to be simple divisions where it's a 50-50 split or at most 60-40. We cannot require dedication for improvements. This would be for street dedications, sidewalk improvements, or lighting. We are under SB 9. These projects would not be required to do that work. We can require and will require utility easements as necessary, or public utility easements for providing services will be required on the map. They did put provisions in there that to prevent continuous dividing. So if you divide your land under the SB 9 or the urban lot split, you cannot come back in the future and do that split again. So it's not a way to circumvent the traditional map process. This is meant just for division of land one time. And a partner with that too, the law does not allow you to work, they call it in concert with a neighbor or adjoining property owner. So you each can't do your own lot split really to get some larger project. So there is provisions to make sure that these are single lot splits by one party and to remain just the 2 lots. If it's a lot split, the owner must sign an affidavit with us that says that he or she, the property owner, will live on the property as their primary residence for at least 3 years. The division would allow the development of 2 units per lot. So a single lot that's divided into 2. You could have two units on each lot. We do count ADUs and junior ADUs as a unit. So 2 would be the most you could get on each lot, including those accessory living units if they are proposed. Like the ADU regulations that we did a couple years ago, the law does have specific setback requirements that we must meet. We can't require any more than a 4-foot rear or side yard setback. So our traditional setbacks in many of our single family zones are 5 feet, and some zones could be even bigger. We cannot require under this provision anything more than 4 feet. A demolition on, if you have a property that maybe has an old house in the center of it and you would like to remove that and divide it into 2 lots, we would allow that to happen provided those other provisions that I mentioned earlier are not part of it, that unit was deed restricted or that it had a tenant occupying it within the past 3 years. If there's a unit on the property that needs to be removed and rebuilt in place, maybe it's in poor condition, that may occur. So if the setback that existed for that unit didn't meet today's standards, it could go back in the same place under these provisions of SB 9. And similar to that, if they had a non-conforming situation on the property and they're going to do a split as a condition of that map, we cannot make them correct that zoning by the zoning condition. I mentioned we could apply objective standards. So we have 2 for the urban lot splits that are net lot area, which is what we look at. Let's say we had that 1,200 square foot minimum lot size. So any lot that's proposed to be divided would have to meet the minimum lot size net area. And that would be exclusive of creek side setbacks. And so as you recall, we do have a setback from our creeks just to the amount of properties that we have along the creek. So we maintain that area open for environmental purposes. So our standard is we are still applying that creek setback distance. And so the net area that they accomplish from their parcel map would be exclusive of that setback. And that the parcels divided, they must front on a public street or have some direct access to a public street with a minimum 20-foot driveway. So that would be consistent with what we do now, where you can cross one property to get to another, to get to the street, but you can't cross multiple properties. So those we did include in the ordinance as our objective standards. But then again, I'll remind you that we cannot apply these standards if it does preclude them from developing their 800 square foot unit. So just to give you some visuals of what it could look like, there's many configurations, but here's a few just to give you an idea. So you have these are 3 different situations, all facing a public street. The first one here is one lot that has an existing dwelling on it. Could be divided in half. Remember, they have to be of equal size or nearly equal size. So the lot line is put down the middle. Where the existing dwelling is, a new unit is added to the rear. And then on the newly created vacant lot, it can have 2 units. If you have another lot that's vacant, you could divide it and you could go east-west division because it just needs to be equal. They would have the 20-foot required access driveway to the back parcel that leads directly to the public street. And you could put 2 dwellings on the front parcel and 2 dwellings on the back parcel. And the law does allow for the units to be attached to each other. So in this case, you could consider it a duplex or something similar like that where they could attach. So they could be separated or they can be attached. and that would be considered 2 units. And in this case, this to show you an example where we're counting ADUs as a unit. If you have an existing dwelling and you have an ADU on your property, you can still divide it if you can get the 50-50 split and provide your required access, and then put 2 additional dwellings on the rear property.
Allison, I have a question
Yes.
on this graph. On the first sample where you've got the lot with 1 existing home and you've added 3, how are the rear, since you have to have access to the public street, how are the rear 2 buildings going to do that without an easement?
Well, it's 1 owner, so the access would be, right, this is 1 lot. And so their access is directly to the public street. So you would assume that they would, for parking purposes, which they have to provide, they would have a driveway or something to get them to the back, but they don't really necessarily need the access easement because it's 1 parcel that already fronts on the street.
Don't the other 2 examples have 1 parcel that also fronts on the street?
Yes, and so the access would be for the new parcel that's in the back.
Okay, so on number 1 again, there would be enough room to have a long driveway to reach the back buildings.
You would assume, yes, yeah. We don't have that requirement, but you would assume there would be some sort of configuration to keep them from having to walk all the way from the front to the back.
We don't want to assume anything here.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, but the lot itself does have public street frontage. So it would be they would be designing something that would give them access to the back lot, but it doesn't have to be a drive access.
So they aren't necessarily going to have a garage with that building for a
Correct.
car. They may have to park on the street.
Sure, they may,
Okay.
yeah.
Allison, I do have a question. I want to roll back what you said a couple of minutes ago.
Sure.
You said the minimum lot size was 1,200 square feet.
Yes, 1,200 square
In
feet,
theory, you could have a 2,400 square foot lot and split it in half.
correct. As long as the zoning is single family.
That's not RD5 though. That's less than RD5, is it not?
Yes, yeah. We probably don't have any properties, single family, that are that small. You're gonna find maybe a few 4,000 square foot lots in some areas, but most are gonna be greater than 5,000. But in the case that there was, as long as they could get at least 1,200 square feet, then they would meet the requirements of SB 9.
We have the Sylvan property where some of the lots are 3,000 square feet. A very small lot.
Yeah, I think most of them
Very-
are probably an RD10 or an RD20 zoning, so would not qualify just because of their underlying zoning is not technically single family.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay.
So to implement the urban lot splits, as I mentioned, it is going to be a ministerial action, so there'll be no public noticing or hearings. So we did have to create the new application type since our existing parcel map process has those requirements of the hearings and notice. So we have created an urban lot split, or we'll be creating an urban lot split application form. And then with that, obviously, because it takes review by all the different agencies for compliance to the regulations. We do not have a fee. We haven't done a fee study on this of how much it would cost to process. So we have added it to the fee schedule just as on a time basis. So they'll be charged like we do filing maps that come in now. They pay a deposit and they just get deducted from their hours to process it. So we don't expect that there'll be much time involved in these because the regulations are so narrow. But we'll kind of see how it goes after we get a few applications. So we have added that to the master fee schedule as a time and material processing. And just a note, since that is being adopted by resolution, that fee will not come into place until 2/7/22 because it's a 60-day period.
Does that mean that we would delay any earlier applications that time frame?
Well, we have to take applications starting January 1. So we will
And-
have a period, there'll be no fee. Okay, so then we go on to the zoning section, which is the development of the homes themselves. As a member, you can use, members of the public could use just the land division part, or they could use this, the development of the homes part, or they could use them together. So this would be if you're proposing to develop the 2 units. So this will amend our zoning code by adding standards in there for what we call the 2-unit developments. And again, this is a ministerial action, so it'll be treated similar like we do single-family homes now. But it will be 2 units on the single property. We can require utility easements if they're needed for the project. There will only be allowed 2 units per lot, and this would also include ADUs or junior ADUs. Again, the 4-foot side and rear setbacks would apply for 2-unit developments as well. Same demolition restrictions apply, that if they can't be demolished or altered if there's been a tenant in a building that's there or it's deed restricted. If a unit needs to be removed and rebuilt, it can be placed back in its original location. We do require at least 1 parking space per unit in the law, but they did also put provisions in there where that parking space wouldn't even be required if there's certain distances to transit. So we can require 1 spot, but many of our properties would be exempt from that requirement.
Oh, Allison, if,
Mhm.
if a lot gets subdivided, how long does the homeowner or the property owner have to demolish the property? Is there to demolish the building? Do they have to? Can they convert the existing building to 2 dwellings, or?
They could convert into 2 units, an existing unit. They would, there's no time requirement. If they're doing it with a map, there is requirements on the map length, but not for the development. And I believe the law does also have some provisions in there that the units could be sold, could be conveyed separately. So utilities get a little bit trickier if they're attached units or they're doing conversions, because they'd have to have separate utilities.
I'm just thinking if somebody wanted to subdivide their property for future sale, if that's already done, I just,
And then sell it, the vacant lot.
yeah.
Yeah, they could do that. There is no requirement to build any certain time frame. So you could divide your property, get the 2 lots, and then sell the newly created lot or the existing lot.
Allison, I have a question too. Are you done? Jen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah. So looking at this page, where you say there's a minimum of 1 parking space per unit
Mhm.
with some exceptions, but going back to the earlier page where we had the 3 samples,
Mhm.
and that going again back to that first sample, if there's no driveway to the rear unit, how can we require a parking space? 'Cause
Well,
there's no way for, huh?
the parking space doesn't have to be, it has to be provided on the property. One, it doesn't have to be with the new unit. So you could put them in the front of the existing unit. So it doesn't
What
have
if
to,
what if the front existing unit, has a garage and a driveway? Would that driveway, if it was a double car garage, would that driveway then be a 2 parking space for those 2 units?
it
so
would
they-
be considered 2 parking spaces for the existing unit, and they would have to come up with 1 additional parking space for the new unit.
Okay.
But
Wow.
there's 4 new units on that, not 2, so it's quadrupling, not,
Yeah,
This is crazy.
It is crazy.
that would be great for 1-car families. But you have a family across the street that has some working, some not, and then you're gonna add 3 more families onto that site.
This could destroy neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Absolutely could.
Let's let her finish.
Let's let Allison finish her presentation and we can
Yeah.
take
No
comments at the
problem.
end.
Okay, and so I mentioned we had some objective
keep going.
standards that we could apply. So we did parking, one parking space is required, and so we did put a minimum size. Because people do try to say, well, I drive a Prius, I only need a 6x5 area. So we did put a minimum parking space size. And then we'd also carried this one over to this development as well, that the units have to meet the creek setback distances. But then again, we have that caveat where we can't apply these standards if it precludes them from developing at least 800 square feet. So here's some examples for the 2-unit development. And this is where one parcel just adds 2 units. So there's no land division. This is just taking an existing parcel and adding additional units. So in the same case as earlier, there's an existing dwelling. They can add a new secondary dwelling to the property or a new unit. If it's vacant, they can add 2 units. And again, they can be side by side attached, or they can be separated. And then in this last example, they have an existing dwelling, but they have an ADU. They would be not able to add an additional unit because they already have 2. So to implement the 2-unit development, we are going to have an application process, but it's mostly for tracking and for our purposes and tracking the SB9 projects. The decision again is ministerial. It will be similar like single family. They'll just submit to us their site plan so we can confirm and then get any necessary information that we need from them. And this one, it's pretty simple process, so there'd be no fee. We're not adding anything to the master fee schedule on the 2-unit development process. And just a couple points on SB9. So 2-unit development versus ADU development. Because it took me a while to kind of figure out, well, why wouldn't you just do an ADU versus 2 units? So there are some very similarities in some cases. Doing an ADU, if your objective is to get another living unit, and doing an ADU would make much more sense. So both the 2-unit development and the ADU legislation that we have in place allows 2 units on a single property. But if you recall, ADUs, there's provisions in the ADU law where there's fee reductions. So in certain size of ADUs, they don't pay the impact fees. There is no provisions for that in 2-unit development. They would pay full impact fees. There are size limits to ADUs if they're a detached unit, but they can go up to 1,200 square feet. So that's still a pretty good size. And then if it's a single property, as I showed in the earlier, you could have your primary dwelling, you can have your accessory dwelling, and then you could also have the junior accessory dwelling, which is that internal accessory unit, and it's internal to the primary house. So in some cases, you could have 3 units if you use the ADU provisions instead of the 2-unit development. So I just wanted to point out those differences. And then just to deny a project, there is very, very narrow provision for us to deny a project. It actually would have to be through the chief building official, and he would have to have a preponderance of evidence with specific and adverse impacts of why it should not be approved. So very, very narrow area where we could deny a project that's meeting all these requirements as outlined in SB 9. And just kind of recap, as we talked a little bit about, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. This law was signed late, and so like us, many jurisdictions are still figuring it out as we go along, and there's so many different scenarios and trying to figure out how they impact the community. You know, if you read the big documents that they put on the law, it'll have minimal impacts. But I think as a few of you already mentioned, we do expect it will have impacts at our level. We already have had several people inquire about them. Didn't spend a lot of time with them to figure out if they'll actually be able to make it work. Now that we've learned more about SB 9, but people do know about it, and they will be waiting for this to be adopted to see if it fits their project. As we learn more, HCD is supposed to be coming out with their interpretation, their guidebook, like what they did on the ADU law. But in that regard, it took them almost a year for that to come out. So we don't expect anything right away. And so we may be coming back in the future as we learn more and revising the ordinance as necessary, maybe to address things more specific to our area within our narrow purview that we can. And SB 9 goes into effect January 1st, whether we adopt this or not tonight. But what we have presented is adding some objective standards to kind of address our situation here. The law did have some areas in it that, unless you have an adopted ordinance saying differently, then you can do certain things. And so we have included those provisions in the ordinance tonight that would, have the narrowest review for implementing, especially on the lot split side. And as I mentioned, we've had interest already shown by the public, so that's why it's presented to you in an urgency fashion. So it did not go before the Planning Commission and does not have to have a second reading. It would go into effect sooner, but because it's urgency, it will take a 4/5 vote. And then we will be before the Planning Commission at their first meeting in January and kind of updating them on this, since they didn't get to hear it. It kind of came all about after their last meeting. So other than that, I have the motions here for you, but probably have a lot of questions. And so I will leave this up for you to read when you're ready.
Yes.
Mr. Miller, then Jeannie.
Thank you. First question, have we done a fire code analysis on all this? It seems like we're putting a lot of buildings awfully close together, and so that I'm sure there's standards for fire separation, and I actually would strongly feel if we're forced to do this, that we require these homes to have fire sprinklers. And that leads to the next question. Do we have capacity in our system, in our hydrants, to support that kind of thing? And going even further, we're quadrupling what goes on our land site: water, sewer, power, gas. I mean, we're going to be producing 4 times as much garbage out of these lot splits, and so that has a financial impact on us.
Maybe pause and let Allison.
I answer these questions. So yeah, I guess I would like an answer to the fire code and how that affects putting these buildings so close together.
So the law, so it's a great question, and many of them obviously I don't have answers to, but as far as fire, there was no provisions for them to not be required to meet fire requirements. So it will be processed like we do today with single family homes. In certain situations, they have to go to the fire department for review. It depends on how far the home sits off the street. New homes are required fire sprinklers, so they will have to do that. The objective standard that we placed for that 20-foot access easement was to at least provide fire access to that rear lot, as that would be their minimum standard. So that's pretty much all I got, but there is no provision. They do have to comply with fire code.
So we'd have to show a hammerhead, correct?
They'll have to show some, depends on how far it is off the street. If it's more than 150 feet from the public street where they could park their truck, then they will have to provide some sort of turnaround or access on the property. But it just depends on how far they are off the road.
So next question, a neighbor, any of our neighbors goes in and submits plans, pulls a building permit, the first time we'll know that they're encroaching and got that 4 foot from our property line instead of 10 to 20 feet setbacks. That'll be the first time we know is when they start digging foundations. We will have no say-so in the taking of what we thought was RD5 property now becomes RD10, and we will have no notice when this happens around us. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we can just throw out our zoning code, land use maps, everything.
I've said that a few times these past few weeks.
Yeah, and so you're treating this on an urgency basis, and I appreciate that, but then I'm hearing that the state will take over a year to clarify all these regulations that they just sprung on us. I don't know if I could support this.
Jeannie?
Well, yeah, lots of questions, and one of them has to do with what Steve's comment just was. If we don't pass this ordinance, then SB 9 is foisted upon us anyway, as I understand it. But we don't have our objective standards in place that make it, in my opinion, better for Citrus Heights than if they're not there. Am I correct in that statement?
That is correct. It will go into effect January 1st, regardless whether we pass it here tonight. The difference being we have included some of our standards and then some of the provisions in the law that said you can only do this certain situation if you have adopted an ordinance. And so those situations in the law where it said that, we did include them in here. So some of them had to do with the demolition of the home. We could only have those requirements if we had it in our ordinance. So
Basically, having an ordinance in place puts us in a stronger position than if we don't.
correct. And we do have, I mean, a lot of the people that are inquiring, it's been hard for us to understand how the law is going to go forward since we're learning it as well. And having an ordinance in place for us does make us able to provide the public the best information that we have and that we're going forward with, as we could have documents to show them, this is our ordinance, this is how we're interpreting it, this is how we're implementing it. And it gives a consistent response to the public. So even though there are still a lot of questions, it does provide a good basis for us to move forward.
Well, when I read through this in its entirety, it became clear to me that the objective standards that we have added to what SB 9 requires puts us in a better position, and I applaud you for putting a little bit of sense into a law that I think is going to be potentially harmful to Citrus Heights. Some more thoughts here. You've answered some of them along the way. One of the things you said a couple times is that you cannot do the split if a tenant has occupied the house within the last 3 years.
Mhm.
Does that apply if it's vacant now? If they've had a tenant within the last 3 years, but it's not, they don't currently have a tenant?
That's the way we're going to interpret it to mean.
What?
Yeah, who knows what, I mean, that's what it's basically just what the law says, if there's been a tenant, but there's no further explanation. That's some of the problem with it, is it says something, but there's no backup. So I would
Vague.
interpret it that it would mean if there's been a tenant, whether it's vacant or now, within 3 years, it can't be demolished.
Okay. But it can still be split if it meets the other criteria.
Yes, the tenant has to be, is only if the home wants to be removed or altered.
Oh, okay, got it.
If it is a split though, you do have, the owner has to use one of the newly developed homes or the existing
Right.
home as
So it
the
has to-
primary residence.
So it has, one of the units on the new configuration has to be owner occupied.
Correct. And that is an affidavit that we have to get from the owner.
Right.
But, you know, it's an affidavit that we get. That's it.
I got that. So then you have to enforce it if enforcement becomes an issue.
Right.
Okay. On the applicants that the interest that you've received so far, have these been RD5 lots or have they been larger lots?
Both, most of them have been, I would RD5 lots, but of larger size. And that is one thing that we probably is a little bit unique to Citrus Heights. In many areas, we have small homes on bigger properties. So there is opportunity for this to occur, in those situations that may be less impactive than in certain situations. Like in my traditional subdivision neighborhood, it would be crazy to do this, but I could do it. But we do have parts of the city where the lots are, maybe standard size, but the homes are somewhat smaller. So it may not be as impactful.
The older sections, I would
Yeah.
imagine. Okay. What was the impetus of this bill? Do you know?
Just basic increase housing, and
It could potentially quadruple density in any given neighborhood.
yeah, they have done, according to their studies that they did, through all of their university outreach, they thought it would be very small impact. I think as it's moving forward and people are grappling with this, that people are not buying that. So we will see what happens over the next few months with this law. I think there are some cities that are really taking up a challenge with it, and we could see some changes come from the legislature in the future. I don't know them. I don't have a crystal ball, but there's a lot of upset cities and jurisdictions just like us.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Thank you. Allison, when did you first receive notice of this? How long have we been working on this?
Well, we had heard about it earlier in the year, and we were one of the 230 cities that submitted a letter in opposition to SB 9. And so we were involved early just from hearing about it. But then we didn't get signed, I don't think, until like September 16th or something. So very late did it actually get signed by the governor. I think they ended up signing like 30 some different housing bills in September, and this was one of them.
So if we adopt this, and I think that it's probably, while it's very unpalatable, having something in place versus nothing in place is better. Are we in a position to interpret this moving forward and make changes to our local ordinance in order to guide or lessen the impact? Or are we just kind of stuck with whatever SB 9 says? It doesn't really matter what we write. If we, put in a guideline that essentially is a little more constructive than just opening it up to SB 9, are we allowed to do that? We have guidelines where we want to adopt tonight, but do we have the ability in the future to go through and say, yeah, we really need to adjust this, or this is a way we can,
Yeah, that's a great question.
make something out of the chaos? Because this is going to be chaotic, incredibly.
And we would do that through objective standards. If we can come up with things, or as we move forward through this and learn more and start working with the public and seeing what we're getting presented, it will help us as well. But if we can turn something into an objective standard, and that's something that, as I mentioned, it's not really, there's no discretionary review. It either meets this requirement or it doesn't. If we can come up with objective standards, we can incorporate those into the ordinance. And I do see that coming as possible revision as we work more through this. Other parts of the legislation for other areas they're going to this objective standard concept. And so for other things that we have coming down, we will be developing objective standards, and I will see that we will be putting these into the SB 9 regulations as well to carry that through, but it would have to be through this objective standard concept.
And Councilmember Schaefer, just if I could chime in, I think similar to what the ADU laws were, we were unsure what the ramifications would be and what the impact would be. And the state adjusted over time. When we talked to HCD, right when the law came out, they hadn't really even read the law yet. So I think there's going to be a lot of catching up to do, and we're going to monitor that closely because we do see the impacts that you're concerned about and share those concerns, and we'll make sure that we're on top of it as well.
Councilmember Daniels.
Thank you. Earlier, it was mentioned that this applies to RD1 through RD5. Allison, for the public, can you explain what is meant by RD1 and RD5?
Sure. So the RD zones are residential development zones, and the number represents a density. So in RD1, you're going to find generally 1 home per acre. So those are generally lots that are, 40,000 square foot plus. And so that would be, they allow single family unit on an RD1 zone. To RD5, your more traditional subdivision zones, which is a residential development with a density of 5 homes per acre. So our RD5 zone has a minimum square footage of 5,000 square feet. So this would apply to any properties that carry that RD1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 designation. So not multifamily units where you see multifamily or you see the smaller lots, which are your RD 7 through 30 zones. So RD 1 through 5, this would apply to.
Thank you. Can you go back to your urban lot splits page? I think it was 10 or 11. Oh,
This one?
I'm sorry, the diagrams.
Oh, the diagram.
Yeah, there. So if I'm looking at the far left, and if I have a RD5 home, and I live on there with nothing else, I can split that lot and I can put 3 other homes on there, correct?
It would, yes, the entire lot would have 3, it would be 2 on each parcel.
So then I take my neighborhood, that's an RD5 neighborhood, and I turn it into an RD20 neighborhood in essence, right?
That is correct.
That is why people are leaving California, because we have idiotic legislatures that make these laws and they throw these things on us like this. It is beyond disgusting. I mean, it actually really, it makes me feel physically ill up here. I don't know if I've ever reacted to anything the way I'm reacting to this tonight, and seeing what this is going to do to our communities, our neighborhoods, our city. We're already the most densely populated area in the Sacramento region. And to think about what this could do, and I really don't have any doubt what will do to cities like ours that are so densely populated already, where it's tough to get around, where, I mean, I've got a neighbor that has, their family has 8 cars, 8 cars in one house. So I see neighborhood fights, I see problems, I see fires eventually, like Councilmember Miller was talking about fire issues and stuff like that. All I see is problems. I don't see solutions at all. I don't see it at all. And so it's just sad. It's unfortunate. It's what's destroying California. And it just is disgusting. I wanted to ask, and I already know the answer, I'm sure, but Councilmember Miller brought up some very good points about the impacts to things like fire, water, sewer, roads, everything imaginable that you connect this to is going to be impacted. And where are we with the ability to put developer impact fees type things on these kind of dwellings? Are we totally restricted, or can we literally, and man, I'm very much anti-developer impact fees, but where are we with that? And are we able to set a fee schedule that, I'm trying to choose my words delicately, but that it makes it more difficult to do this kind of thing?
So that's one good thing about this law is they did not put the provisions in this to reduce fees like they did in the ADU legislation where we can't even collect them. So they will, any developments will pay full impact fees as you would for a single family home. So it would be, they would be paying the same rate that you would pay if you were just developing the one home.
And because we're doing something I would consider way above and beyond what we've ever done with regular development in our city, I'm wondering if we can, do a little brainstorming at some point and really get down to the kind of, just down to the minutia on what will be impacted and add those fees onto these kind of developments as much as possible. And again, I don't know if I shouldn't say something like this, but to discourage this development as much as possible and make it really not worth it, because this is just going to destroy neighborhoods.
Okay,
A comment, please?
yes, please.
Thank you. In kind of that line of thinking too, I'm pleased to see that you have put in the fee structure actual time, staff time, and that there is a collection of let's just say fees up front and then adjust accordingly at the end of the project. So I think we have to be very aware of the tremendous additional staff time that this is going to require because these are not going to be easy projects. And so I just encourage you to keep very careful records about that and make sure that we are that the billing is accurate so that we recoup the costs to the city. Is there any chance that these, since this adds value potentially to these projects, that with these additional units that I would presume that the property would be reassessed and the property taxes would be raised?
I would assume so. Yeah, we do notify the assessor's office when someone improves their property. So yes, the property more than likely will be reassessed at some point through the assessor's office.
I know that when I added a 45-foot long patio cover to my back of my house, that portion of my property was reassessed and my taxes were raised. So I think it's very important to advise the people that are looking at this that they can expect an increase in their property taxes, and that may dissuade them from moving forward.
Yeah, our residents that are doing the ADUs are the same way. We try to explain to them that you do aware that you will be paying new taxes. So even on an ADU, they are being reassessed in that situation as well.
Okay.
I just had a follow-up. Brett, yeah, I talked about the quadrupling of the demand for water, sewer, gas. I think what I'd hate to see is a property owner come in, do this, and find out they can't get electric service or can't get water service, or have to spend money to upgrade the infrastructure. And that has a number of problems for me, because the first one in may not tax the system, but you have a street and the fifth person decides to do it and SMUD says, no, the transformer's not big enough. And they have to pay for everybody ahead of them. So that's a concern of mine. I'd like to hear from our utilities, from SMUD, from American Water, from Suburban Water, from Citrus Heights Water, from PG&E, Comcast, Consolidated, our fire district. Do we have the capacity in our hydrants? And before anybody even starts, and I don't mean to get in the weeds or by any means do I want to tell our planning department how to do their jobs, but shouldn't they have to come in with a commitment letter that these utilities can serve with existing infrastructure, or maybe cannot serve without improvements, or just cannot do it? It's not physically possible. So these people don't spend a ton of money, get it all built, and then, can't get power, can't get water for whatever reason. Just so many questions I'd like answered on this. So stop, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, so I'll open it up now for public comment.
And Mayor, I do see one raised hand. I do not have any speaker cards from the audience, but I do have one raised hand. So Oleg Shisko, you are now able to speak for 3 minutes.
Hello, City Council. Thank you so much. My name is Oleg Shishko. I am a resident of Citrus Heights. I apologize. I think I missed the public comment on item number 16, and primarily that's what I wanted to just leave a comment and ask a question. Hopefully one of you guys can, either the city or the council can answer about that. So concerning the Sylvan Soil Remediation Project, the city attorney commented and he mentioned that during the due diligence period of the buyer discovered that there were certain environmental hazards that now need to be cleaned up by the city since the city is the current owner. So my question to the staff and council is, did we as a city go through our due diligence on this? Was there any prior knowledge that environmental issues may come up during a future sale process? And why was this not discovered when we were going through the process of purchasing? I think this is an important issue because this is costing the city and essentially us, the taxpayers, a significant amount of money. It seems to me that this is not a small, insignificant issue. So just a summary there, is there someone who can answer why the environmental issue was not discovered when we were purchasing the property? And that's all. Thank you.
Ryan, if you could comment on that, please.
Yeah, well, Mayor, the public comment period has ended. I could comment if you'd like, but it is past that one. But the short answer is the city did do its due diligence. We do an inspection, and that's something we did perform at that time. And that's what I would say is we did our due diligence. That was appropriate.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no comments from the audience here about this item. We have one.
I noticed in diagram 1, Jeannie Bruins really brought up a big portion about the driveway and having access to parking back on that second unit on the first diagram. One of the things I don't see anywhere, I love the fire point, but EMTs, where is our handicap accessibility, knowing that I would say probably over 60% of Citrus Heights citizens are over the senior age limit? Where are we looking at accessibility for them to have that handicapped accessibility in and around the building if there's only a 4-foot access to that back fence?
Thank you for that comment. Okay, one more.
Hi, I'm Kathy Morris, and I have a question of clarification. I believe Jeannie brought this up earlier, but the fact is, this is a law. It's going into effect like it or not. Is that correct? And so that the ordinance portions that we can put into place now would give us a little bit more control over the law. So it makes sense to do it, although surely I don't like it. I don't think any of us do, but at least we would have some control and then perhaps maybe get the law changed later. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you.
If there are no further comments, I will close the public hearing. And what is the pleasure of the council?
Well, I'll speak up. I don't think any of us like this, but if we don't take action, it'll be worse. Sorry. And I think that the objective standards that Allison has added along with Casey to this horrible law make it, I can't say more palatable, but puts the puts it more in our favor by having them than not having them. So With that in mind, I will move approval.
Councilmember Bruins, if I could clarify, was that of which, because there's two items for
That's
council.
right. I realized that as soon as I said that. So let me go back to that page. So let me first, thank you.
Allison, if you
So-
could share your screen maybe with the motions.
No, I have it here. So I move that we adopt the urgency ordinance to adopt changes to the Title 82 subdivisions and land development and Title 106 zoning relating to the implementation of Senate Bill 9 for the purpose for the creation of urban lot splits and 2 residential units per lot with the objective standards that our city has added to that ordinance or to that law.
A motion by Bruins. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Motion by Bruins, second by Schaefer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
1 no. Motion carries.
Okay, and then I have, I will go ahead and move a resolution of the City Council of the City of Citrus Heights authorizing the addition of a new application type referred to as urban lot splits to the master fee schedule.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion by Bruins, second by Schaefer. All those in favor? Aye.
No,
Could you wait till I say all those opposed?
couldn't wait to get it out.
Okay, 1 no. Motion passes. Next item, please.
The next item is Department Report number 20. The subject is American Rescue Plan Act funding update.
Good evening, Mayor Middleton and members of City Council. Megan Huber, Economic Development and Communications Manager, here before you this evening, along with my colleague Bill Zanoni, for the next step in our process to deploy American Rescue Plan Act funding. As council will recall, we were before you last month where we laid out proposed next phases for our Citrus Heights COVID recovery plan. We completed phase 1 in May of 2021 by restoring PD staffing levels. We are now embarking on phase 2, of which we are here to provide updates for you this evening, specifically about small business COVID recovery grants, as well as a subcategory of travel, tourism, and entertainment recovery. You'll be hearing about phase 3 and phase 4 at later dates. As a reminder of the one-time funding amounts that we're working with, in May of this year, we received an allocation of approximately $7.8 million, and PD recovery expenses were approximately $5.3 million, which right now leaves around $2.4 million in cash available for this next step of programming. We will be receiving the second tranche in hopefully May of next year, which means the total remaining allocation for phases 2 through 4 is $10.3 million. So last time we were before you in a study session to get your feedback on that phasing recommendation and other details. And what we heard from you is that you would like to hear from our business community as we work to deploy small business COVID recovery dollars, which means tonight it'll be a little bit of a unique department report. We have invited the business community for feedback and input. We'll then present and refine with you the phase 2 program principles, also based on the feedback that we received on November 9th. And finally, we'll recommend fund allocations for phase 2 programs and review next steps. Because we are making big decisions about big one-time funding and we want to make sure we are maximizing its effects for our business community, wanted to take a second, because I know that council really appreciates data and metrics, wanted to take a second to do an update on what our business community looks like through a database lens. Executive summary, I can definitely tell you that we see COVID changes
in the data, and I'm going to walk you through that here now. So as a baseline, we did a business license analysis, and the current active totals are before you here. We have a little over 1,500 commercial businesses and a little over 1,600 home-based businesses. Now, I don't know the stats overall, but I can tell you from my experience as an economic development practitioner, based on our size of city, that proportion of home-based business is very high for a business community. So that's definitely a flag that Citrus Heights can plant, is that we have a significant amount of home-based entrepreneurs. Also happy to report that our average monthly new and renewed business licenses are up in 2021, which means there is great entrepreneurship activity happening. Small businesses are staying resilient and active. We'll talk a little bit more about what the new normal and post-COVID world looks like for them. So taking a look at our top industries, the graph you see before you are the largest industries by job count in Citrus Heights, with top industries being government, healthcare and social assistance, retail, construction, and accommodation and food services. If you'll recall, the past year or so pre-COVID, we had just edged out government in creating healthcare and social assistance as our number one industry segment, and it has been reversed. So a small amount of attrition there. Another really fascinating data set, and really something that shows the real-time effects of COVID and associated public health orders and shutdowns, is how our fastest growing industries have morphed. On the left side, you see our top 5 industries as they were in first quarter of 2020: healthcare and social assistance, accommodation and food services, construction, administrative support, and other services. Now, taking a look at what that mix is projected to look like here moving forward in Q4 of 2021, it's shifted. Number one by far is construction. That's certainly backed up by everything that we see in local and regional news, that construction is booming. 2 is healthcare and social assistance. 3, administrative and support services. 4, transportation and warehousing. Now, anyone who knows Citrus Heights knows that this is a little strange because we don't have much in the way of industrial real estate. Really, without the opportunity to do a deep dive here, I have a hunch, and that is we are mostly weighted in that transportation category. When you look at NAICS codes, to qualify for transportation, 2 really big segments that fall underneath that coding are Uber and other rideshare drivers and truck drivers, both of which have remained resilient through COVID and associated shutdowns as well. And finally, 5, professional scientific services. Oh, and looks like we have a double typo there. So one final statistic for you, and something I'm particularly proud of about our Citrus Heights business community: we are absolutely majority small business. What you see here is a pie chart of employee count makeup based on firm size, and 87% of our businesses have less than 20 employees. So that's a key message for our Citrus Heights business community. We are a small business powerhouse. So council, it was really important to us that we did really robust outreach to make sure that we're bringing you real-time quality feedback. And a significant part of that outreach was a business-facing survey that we issued on December 1st. It is still open. It's had about 52 responses so far. We've worked with our business association partners like the Citrus Heights Chamber of Commerce, Sunrise Marketplace, Auburn Boulevard Business Association, and Antelope Crossing Business Association to make sure we're reaching as many of our businesses as possible. We also utilize the city's communications channels, including email, social media, direct outreach, and we're sure to translate the survey into multiple languages to ensure equity and inclusion. So going to review the preliminary survey results with you now. We wanted to take a look at how exactly our businesses have been impacted by COVID. Certainly, when we look to measure impact, it ranges by industry, it ranges by geography, and it was important to us to drill down really hyper locally. So you can see here that the majority of responses noted reduced revenue, about 30% of survey respondents so far, followed closely by forced to close or reduce businesses. Of course, we do have many what would be classified as non-essential businesses, although as an economic developer, all businesses are essential to me, that had to close for extended periods of time, and that certainly affects revenues year over year. Also high effects, seeing increase in homelessness and blight and having to deal with that in commercial areas, difficulty hiring and retaining talent, and also supply chain impacts, all of which are reinforced by everything we see in the news and how it's affecting our economy locally. We also asked for those who noted revenue loss, what percentage of your total revenue does the loss represent approximately? And almost 70% of our businesses have experienced at least 15% revenue loss in those survey results so far. So before we dive into staff recommendations on proposed program principles, we would like to give you what you asked for, give you a chance to hear from our business community. We have a couple of speakers that we've coordinated based on ongoing dialogue that we have with our business community consistently. And I'll also check with our city clerk to see if there are other folks who have responded to the invitation. So first and foremost, Amy, I'm going to make eye contact with you. Is Diane available to speak?
Yes, both of our speakers are on the Zoom.
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
But
Welcome, Diane.
Hi, I can't turn my video on. Is that okay?
No worries. We can hear you just fine.
Okay. Well, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Again, I'm Diane Ebbett with the Citrus Heights Chamber of Commerce. I'm the Executive Director, and I started working for the Chamber in April 2020. And my job with the Chamber is to help businesses succeed in their business. But COVID hit, and after the shutdown with COVID, it was apparent that businesses were not going to be allowed to open anytime soon. So I facilitated a small protest in Citrus Heights for our business community. It was basically just to let the governor know that our businesses need to open and that the chamber was doing what we could to support their view on this. So during this time, I walked the corridors of Sunrise Boulevard and Auburn Boulevard, and I came across businesses that had closed their doors permanently. And some were open despite the lockdown simply because they had no other way to make a living. Every business I walked to and got in touch with, they were very supportive of what the chamber was trying to do. I was asked by many of the businesses if I knew of a place they could go to get money to help keep their doors open, and I had no place to send them, unfortunately. And I had one business owner actually cry when I walked in because after 10 years, she could no longer keep her store. I also heard stories of businesses that spent hundreds of dollars when they were finally able to reopen, but they had to spend this money in order for them to reopen. But then after 2 weeks, they were closed again. And that was money that they had to spend that they didn't have. Our businesses are hurting because of the COVID pandemic. They struggle every day to keep their doors open. With less customers and the cost of wages going up, it's been devastating to our businesses. I just want to tell a quick story. Growing up, my parents owned a Dairy Queen. And yes, we did get all the ice cream we wanted. But my parents worked 14 to 16 hours a day. And us kids worked the weekends and after school. And I know the devastation that would have happened in my home if my parents would have had to close their doors. The anguish of not being able to support their family. Now I'm going to ask you guys to do something for me. I would like every council member to close their eyes just for a minute. Imagine going to your business and the doors are locked. You can't go in and you don't know when you will be able to go in. 3 months go by. Now you can reopen. But before you do, you need to make changes with money you don't have. You have to beg and borrow the money, and now you can reopen. But wait, 2 weeks later, you are told to close again. These businesses need help. Making the ARPA funds available to the Citrus Heights businesses would help lift a huge burden. They can pay back the money they had to beg and borrow just to remain open. So please help them. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Diane.
Yes.
Council, you also heard from Bill and I the recommendation that we explore a subcategory of programs specifically responding to the travel and tourism segment that includes the entertainment sector. And we wanted to make sure that you had relevant and real-time market intelligence of what the entertainment sector looks like post-COVID here in Citrus Heights. So we have invited 2 stakeholders in that category. The first is Store Capital, the owner of 8505 Auburn Boulevard. We know it better as the vacant Studio Movie Grill site. They were not able to join us this evening. However, they did provide an audio recording of comments that I will play now.
Hello, City of Citrus Heights City Council. I am Scott Angel with Store Capital, and I really appreciate your guys' consideration for the COVID relief funds. We regret that we could not be in the meeting tonight, but we had a prior engagement. I've got some handouts that should be getting passed out to you guys shortly about our project overview, but I want to just talk briefly about kind of what's going on with the site. So the property was constructed in 1972 and has been vacant since 2016 when Kmart vacated the premises. In 2018, Studio Movie Grill selected the parcel for construction, and at that time, Store Capital funded the mortgage on the property. In 2019, construction but came to a halt in early 2020 as the onset of COVID-19 paralyzed the movie theater industry. The dark project brings unwanted attention to the shopping center, negatively impacting adjacent operators. Completion of the construction will bring the community together at the new entertainment venue, creating job opportunities, additional tax income for the municipality, and will benefit the existing shopping center by bringing new patrons to the area. COVID-19 has had significantly affected the movie theater industry, with box office sales down 80% in 2020 from 2019. At the Citrus Heights location, the proposed operator suffered extended closures nationwide and was plagued with financial constraints. Later in 2020, Studio Movie Grill filed for bankruptcy protection and ultimately abandoned the Citrus Heights project mid-construction, and Store foreclosed on the premises in mid-2021. As a result, Store has been carrying the maintenance of the vacant asset while actively looking for a quality operator who is also amenable to resuming the plans partially carried out by the former tenant. Store is applying for these funds to attract a quality tenant, and more specifically for completion of the half-constructed building, parking lot repair, new signage, and rental relief for the operator for their ramp up through the end of the COVID pandemic. We thank you for your time.
Thanks to Store Capital for their comments. As referenced in the comments, Council received supplemental material via email earlier today. In his comments, Scott mentioned negative impact to neighboring tenants, and that's just as significant an issue as the direct vacancy of the theater site, which is why we invited Red Mountain Group, a fantastic property owner here in the Citrus Heights community. They own the adjacent Big Lots site and much of the Citrus Grove Shopping Center parking lot. And I am pleased to introduce you to Graham Alcorn, representing them this evening.
Good evening, council and staff, and a big shout out to Casey and Megan. Casey has been with us since the beginning, so thanks, Casey. Hey, I want to real quickly thank Ms. Middleton and Mr. Schaefer for being new mayor and vice mayor, respectively. And I'm really sorry about your officer, Mark, if I say this right, Stoskik. I have a super soft heart for first responders, so I'm very, very, very sorry about that. Let me give you a quick overview. Red Mountain is one of the partners and one of the owners of the property. And Red Mountain is currently in 20 states. We have 122 properties. And during COVID, we have 860 tenants in those properties. That's total. And we were very aggressive in trying to help our tenants that wanted to help themselves. And most of our tenants did. So out of the 860 tenants, the first round, I think Miss Diane Evatt, so Diane Evatt, talking about the kind of 3 phases of the closure, it was very evident to us. So out of the 860 of our tenants, the first phase, we did rent relief and or forgiveness or other assistance to over 300 of our tenants. We have 60 people total between our management company and development, and we had 16 people working 6 hours a day. I'm sorry, six days a week. We had 16 people, hearing everybody's stories, and you can only imagine, as I can hear Diane's voice, you can only imagine you're hearing people's lives crater. How am I going to pay for this? How am I pay for that? And so every day, these our employees are just, God bless them, and they're still all with us and had been through the whole pandemic. It was a very difficult job. And then subsequently, second and third round, I think I wrote this down. I think I got this right. It was like 300 first, 78 second, 26 on the third round. As you can see, we only lost out of all those tenants about 7 total, and a lot of that was due to the people the staff that we dedicated to it, and also we're a very low debt company, and you don't think about those things until a pandemic happens and people can't pay rent. We were very active nationally with Senator McCarthy, and trying to get the federal government to understand when tenants don't pay, rent doesn't get paid, meaning mortgages don't get paid. And again, we were very, very fortunate as a national company to be able to work with our tenants, and everybody's back except one tenant, I believe, in the portfolio. Everybody's back up and running. What I wanted to talk, it was very interesting too. Hey, Megan, I didn't know this information. The survey is very interesting that you're 30%, and I won't go into great detail about our losses because I don't think, Megan, that's something you want me to do tonight. And I know that we are not, their 30% matches the 30% that our tenant Big Lots has lost through the pandemic, starting start open in April, but they had a significant loss, and it's so interesting that 30% is the same as your survey that you had in your paperwork as cities national 30%. I know that we're not the entertainment sector, but we're dramatically impacted by the entertainment of Studio Movie Girl. I mean, it was a shame. This gentleman, Brian, who started Studio Movie Girl, really started the whole movie and dining business, if you will. I mean, his business was virtually taken, and he received no compensation. And here we sit today to try to get compensation for the damages that we received. And it's something that we really, really, or hopefully respectfully, will be part of what the city council looks to award, and want to furnish any other additional data that you would like us to see or like to see from us. I'm not sure what else to say. I'm not sure if you want to go in the detail, but our total damages that we could very easily calculate is just over 5 million, of which 1.5 is actually the lost sales from Big Lots. We do a lot of deals with Big Lots, and we are trying desperately to make sure that they do not close. And I can't say with certainty that they won't, and that would be quite a catastrophe, because this is by far, out of the 122 properties, unfortunately, this is the worst as a percentage of hurt, if you will, or damage, if you will, to an asset. It was the worst damage to any asset that we've had by a pretty significant amount. And I don't like to be here in this position, but I have to say, your city, you know, Casey, Megan, has been very, very proactive and wanted to understand what we do. We have poured a lot of money back into the property to try to fix it. We're working with Store Capital to try to fix the on-site work, because it's very unsightly, as you know, and it's affecting all the other tenants in the center. And we are just here to try to help as much as we can to give you the information. There comes a point where we can't keep feeding the property money, is what I'm talking about. But we have been doing that all through COVID to try to shore up, the Big Lots and maintain that relationship we have with them. Because, like they say, you're only as good as your last deal. We were reminded of that, by the way, at Vegas ICSC, which is much smaller this year, this past Monday and Tuesday. And although they were kidding, it was pretty clear that this is becoming quite an issue for them. So we're here to help. I want to thank you very much. You know, you're a very good city, I have to tell you, being all over the country, especially being in California, and this whole SP9 and hearing your concerns. I am on your side. This is the most difficult state in the country by far to get things done and deliver commerce and deliver constituents in your city and other cities what they deserve. It's very difficult, but this is where I live and this is what I do, and available for questions. But thank you so much for hearing me tonight. Megan, thank you so much for setting this up. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us, Graham. Appreciate it. I'd like to check real quick with our city clerk to see if there might be any other visitors we are hosting.
I do not see any at this time.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So moving into our recommended recovery strategy and program principles, as council recalls, we're recommending a two-pronged approach. First, a small business COVID recovery grant program, and second, a travel, tourism, and entertainment recovery program. Talking first about the Small Business Recovery Program, we've done quite a bit of research. These grant programs are still in their infancy. Cities are figuring out how to administer these funds to small businesses, and we've done a lot of research to determine the eligibility factors and application process. That number one is as inclusive and equitable as possible to our businesses, to include anyone who needs it. And number two, to make it as easy to administer as possible. We know that our small businesses are busy out there just looking to survive, and we do not want to give them a huge chore of an application process. Now, that being said, we still have due diligence that we have to do to be able to administer these funds in a responsible way. But what we're going to review now are the program principles that we have seen and that we'd like to recommend as most effective for eventual guidelines. So looking here is a list to determine business eligibility. The business must be located and licensed in Citrus Heights, operational as of March 1st, 2020, and is still in business. It is open to all industries, available to franchises and affiliate businesses. The business entity, to ensure that we are focusing on small business right now, earned $3 million annual revenue or less in calendar year 2019 and experienced a net revenue loss of at least 15% for calendar year 2020 or calendar year 2021, because we are moving very quickly into 2022. So we want to make sure we're moving in real time alongside our businesses. The business employs 20 FTE employees or less as of March 1st, 2020. And it can have multiple locations, but we would count those locations as a single business. The proposed grant amounts that correspond to that eligibility, we're recommending 2 segments and a tiered approach. For small businesses, the tiered grant amounts would be based on pre-COVID revenue generation with brackets in the graph to the right and corresponding grant amounts. We also recommend a flat grant amount for home-based businesses because this is a significant segment that makes up our business community. Eligible expenses for COVID recovery dollars via ARPA include general business operations, payroll expenses, supplier payments, rent, lease, mortgage payments. We are really excited that we're starting to see precedent that this funding could be used for facade and outdoor improvements, especially exciting for our restaurants, which are a top 5 industry segment, if you'll recall. It would absolutely cover PPP and associated costs and costs of compliance in general with county, state, or federal requirements. We also see the possibility of allowing technical assistance, counseling, or other services to assist with business planning needs. As a reminder, per ARPA guidelines, the funding would not be eligible to use for anything outside of the scope of relating to COVID mitigation. That is expressly why Mr. Zanoni walks alongside me in this process to ensure we are conforming to guidelines and that we can expressly draw a nexus to funding allocation and COVID recovery. All that to say, any expense not applicable through the ARPA guidelines would not be eligible, and it cannot be used to fund any business other than that which is receiving the grant. So proposed next steps, if we have alignment on those program principles, staff will work to create a streamlined and expedited application process. We will launch the program. We see the initial application period being 30 calendar days, and subsequent rounds may be initiated if funds are not exhausted during this initial round. I want to take a moment to just emphasize and recognize that as much data as we have on our business community, there's no way to know the true demand of something like this, which means, we're designing the path as we're walking down it. So all that to say, we're prepared that if the program is under leveraged, to devise how to deploy in subsequent rounds to meet extended needs. And then you'll see at the bottom, if the program is over leveraged, we'll work to design a discretionary review process if there is oversubscription. So the business would submit an online application, but again, to be open and inclusive and equitable, we would make sure that paper applications are available for folks who do not have access technologically. And we see it being a really streamlined process that hopefully involves as few documents as possible. We see a business license certificate from the city of Citrus Heights, the 2019 and 2020 or 21, depending on the year that you're showing revenue loss for business tax returns, as well as a W-9. The city would review the application and supporting materials and make the final determination. Moving on from small business recovery into the subcategory that we're talking about for entertainment specifically, wanted to take a moment to share those potential program principles. We see that sub-program targeting tourism and entertainment businesses and or property owners because of the unique needs that we've heard from our property owners here this evening. The entertainment classification includes bowling alleys, movie theaters, performing arts, and event venues. And we see this being because there are such unique needs and we cannot standardize standardize it, like we're standardizing small business recovery, we see this being a request-based program to ensure most effective COVID recovery response. We hope that we could stand up a program to have potentially a 60-day application period. And because these would be unique and practically singular requests, we would set up a review process to include a finance committee review and city council approval. We would also like to underscore, given what you've heard here tonight, that this program give priority to vacant sites causing blight that need capital investment for adequate COVID recovery. So what does that mean in terms of allocations? Staff recommends that we allocate $1 million towards the entertainment-specific COVID recovery grant and use the remaining in excess of $1.4 million for the small business recovery grant. Of course, eligibility is based on those pre-COVID revenue levels, and this would be round one. And next steps would be dependent on program response, which of course we would update council consistently on. So between those two allocations, the total equals the current cash available that we have on hand for programming until the second tranche of the American Rescue Plan Act funding. So if we are in alignment and council supports these principles, the next steps would be for staff to come before you at the January 13th City Council meeting to present the Business COVID Recovery Grant Program guidelines, application process, and launch materials for approval. And then we would launch that as soon as we are able. We currently think we would be able to have that online mid-January, and of course would promise and deliver on robust outreach and engagement for the program. And then in February, March timeline, we would come back before you to present the Tourism and Entertainment COVID Recovery Grant Program guidelines for consideration. So that is what I have for you this evening, and I would now like to open it up for questions.
Do we have any questions, comments? Jean?
Thank you very much for this and the thought that went behind it. Are there any other entertainment and tourism businesses in Citrus Heights besides the ones that we've got the written letters from and the presentation tonight that are targeted by this?
There are other businesses in that segment. All are existing. So the Studio Movie Grill case study is unique in that it's a vacant site and talking about capital investment. The remaining entertainment businesses in Citrus Heights have been in operation pre-COVID, which means they could qualify immediately for the small business grant. And then depending on the scope of their COVID impact. I always want to use the word casualty and it's morbid. The scope of their COVID impact, then it could absolutely be wrapped into the request-based program.
Of the $1 million segment. Okay. So my next question is, if the small business community does not consume all of the 1.4 million, would we have a qualification that be added to the million for the entertainment segment? Because I see that particular center as being critical to our improvement in our economic standing, and their issues are multiplied many times greater than most. So, you know, the 1.4 could go in a snap, I know, to the small business, but if it didn't, I'd like to see the ability to move some of that money over into the other side for entertainment and tourism, if it's available to do so.
I have finance blessing.
Yes.
We absolutely can.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can also add, this is dealing with the first half of the funding. So
I realize that. Yes, thank you.
we're not finished.
Right. Thank you. It'd be great if we could see some early results.
Okay.
I can't think of any others. We don't have a center as grossly impacted as the failure of Studio Movie Grill. Very critical to the other businesses to have the walk-up. So that's good to know. I can't think of any. Is there anything you could think about there?
Not in my
scale.
mental inventory. It's certainly singular in terms of the exponential COVID impact that it has on our community.
It's huge. Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Thank you. I'd just like to know, when we talk about these businesses and we talk about their impact, and I can't tell you how compassionate I am with some of these, how these folks have been dealing with this. Certainly my concern is that whatever money goes out into the business impact, I want to see that there's an impact outside of somebody's checkbook.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? I mean, it just, to hand somebody, well, you know, we've been impacted by $1 million. Here's $1 million. And they just sort of compensate their checkbook and say, okay, well, we're better now. But they actually don't do anything with the funds. The funds simply sort of cure their, you know, but they don't actually, you know, construct anything with it. That's the concern. I would say that I would want some kind of stipulation that says whatever money, we have to see some movement somewhere, as far as this kind of, I would like to see this money have an impact overall, rather than just say, yeah, I'm sorry, you're impacted by $5,000. Here's $5,000. I know it's not very much, but at the same time, I would like to see those dollars, and 5,000, 25,000, $1 million, whatever those dollars go into, that they actually do something with that, rather than just kind of say, well, you know, we were impacted, now we've been compensated, and we're kind of there. So that's my only comment.
Thank you.
I think one thing we just do have to keep in mind is the federal guidelines for these funds are to assist businesses that have already been impacted by COVID. So we just have to also be mindful that for businesses that lost revenue in 2020 or that lost revenue this year due to COVID, may not be in a position to show a positive, they've lost revenue. And so this is to help them stay in business or recover what they've lost. We just have to keep that in mind also, that not every business is going to be able to, I don't believe, show us something that a tangible result, other than hopefully this has helped them stay in business.
Because it could be towards payroll or whatever, that
Yes,
we don't
yes.
see a change necessarily, but it
Yes.
keeps them afloat.
Definitely.
Okay.
I think it's really important not to lose sight of, this is the American Rescue Plan. It's a rescue plan. And so, 1,500, I'll call them brick and mortar businesses, for lack of a better term, out there. And even if they took $1,000 each, only $1,000 each, we're already above the 1.4 million that we're talking about going to small businesses. So I think our number's too low there, actually. And I'm kind of concerned on the aspect of it. I really enjoyed what the gentleman said about the former, Kmart building and what they might do with it. And I think that's wonderful. But that's just one business. And I don't know how much he's looking for there, but I'm a little concerned that we might be taking too much of that was intended to rescue a lot of people or a lot of businesses and focusing it into one building. So I would be very concerned about it. I'd really like to know what he's looking for, or especially any kind of big number like that. I just think we're not pushing enough towards the small business. And I think we might end up being surprised by how much request we get. And so I was a little concerned about, you initially said on the the business community engagement, that you gave a number of about only 50 something responses. But then the chamber was actually here and speaking. So I was glad about that because I was concerned, well, are we engaging the chamber? So obviously we are, but are we saying that the 52 responses or whatever you want to call them, do they include those businesses in the chamber? Or did
if I can clarify your question, Councilmember Daniels, I think you're asking if that 52 responses is made up of mostly chamber stakeholders?
No, I'm asking where are the businesses? Because there's 1,500 businesses here in Citrus Heights, and I would be shocked that only 50 people, decided to respond back for input about what we should do with these funds. It seems like more businesses should have had input, and I don't know if maybe they had input through the chamber as a group. Maybe that's where that input is from, but it just seems like 50 out of 1,500 brick and mortars and 1,600 home businesses is a very small number. It's about 2%, I think, or something like that. So did the chamber, did they do an outreach and then come back with their input as a chamber? Anything like that actually where we know we actually reached the business community?
Yes. So in terms of engagement strategy and execution, we engaged all of our business support associations. So that included the Citrus Heights Chamber of Commerce, Auburn Boulevard Business Association, Antelope Crossing Business Association. Each of those organizations was asked to share this opportunity to engage. And I saw at least 2 of them do that directly multiple times. We all know that it takes a higher frequency to get folks to engage now. So really happy to report our partners did a great job in sharing that information multiple times. We also shared it directly with our stakeholders. We do have a qualified economic development business facing listserv ourselves that we've worked really hard to build. Happy to give you those numbers on the back end if you'd like. But all of those audiences were reached as well. We took a tactic of directly outreaching to our businesses one-on-one to cut through on noise. And now are also planning on opening that up more widely via general social campaign in the next week or so. So there is opportunity, really candidly. Sometimes businesses are uncomfortable engaging. They don't always want to talk about their business with government. So it's up to us to meet them where they are. I am expecting, based on my own experience, that we'll see higher engagement once the program is live. People engage once there is something tangible to engage with. That is my hope. And that is what we will continue to work for. And past that, for folks listening at home, I would encourage them to follow us on social media and sign up for all newsletters because there's really great information available.
Thank you. And you actually made a comment that's going to segue into my last point, I believe. Businesses being concerned about sharing their businesses. You're asking for tax returns. There are a lot of businesses that include their business into their just personal income taxes and stuff like that. So I know we got to figure out a way for them to document how they lost some money or whatever. But I just don't know if there's another way to do it. And if not, and if we are going to have this information, what measures are we going to take to make sure that it's secure and that it's private, very private, and not accessible in any way, kind of a thing?
Based on our project management, we believe that those documents that businesses would provide would not be subject to Public Information Act, or at least have the proprietary information that you're referencing redacted. So know that as staff, we would be absolutely cognizant of that.
So I just want us to be sure of that too. Okay, very aware that that information would not be accessible through
I hear you.
information
Absolutely.
request. Thank you very much.
Okay, and over here. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to follow up on Brett's question. When you do a survey, just a pure survey like you did, a 2% response is pretty typical. You know, it sounds very, very low, I know, and it is compared to the total, but in the world of surveys, that's pretty typical, you know, when you get higher than that, then it becomes a little more exceptional. So, and the other thing is, as a small business owner myself, who does only file one tax return, I don't file a separate one for my business. It all lays out on the Schedule C, so it's not difficult to separate business income from personal, you know, other income. Like if I had a job and had a business, which some people, that will be the situation. So I think that the fact that you've kept this simple is very encouraging, because it could be a lot more complicated. And so, and I trust that you will have the safeguards in place so confidentiality will remain intact.
And just a few brief remarks for myself. We have to remember that the chamber and the business associations did have a head start. As soon as COVID happened, they were out there on the ground in the streets talking to business owners, so they were able to collect that data. I actually worked with the Citrus Heights Chamber to help them put together the survey and put it out to make sure that we were touching on those business owners. And 2%, 52 responses in 9 days, it's not bad. I commend you. Any other questions, comments?
Oh, I like your program.
Done.
Excellent. Thanks for your time.
Next item.
Next item is Department Report number 21. The subject is Regional Sacramento Abandoned Vehicle Service Authority, possible ballot measure update.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Let me get our presentation going here. Can you all see that?
Actually, no,
Nope, okay.
That's a different button.
you went black on us, dark.
All right. Well, might ask Amy if she could pull it up then for us.
We can see it now. We can see your presentation now.
I can't.
Very good.
None of us can.
Oh, sorry.
Now we
Much
can.
better. Right button.
All right.
Okay, we're good, Chief.
Good evening. I promise to keep this brief. This is related to the SATSA ballot measure that Councilmember Miller alluded to earlier. Most of this information you have had already, so it's just a quick overview and an update on reduced cost for once, which is always nice. So, overview: the Sacramento County Abandoned Vehicle Authority is a fund that distributes money to help with vehicle abatements throughout the city. The fund is generated by a $1 fee that's added to vehicle registrations. This fee is scheduled to sunset in 2022. And under Prop 26 is now considered a tax. So in order to renew the fee, we need to do a ballot measure under the current legislation. In June of 2021, we presented to council. At that time, the anticipated cost of a ballot measure, specifically to our share to the city, was approximately $62,000. By consensus of council, because of the high cost, we're not going to support that ballot measure. They went back and reanalyzed the ballot measure and in August determined that the cost had been significantly reduced. The Citrus Heights share of that cost now stands at approximately $12,000. And just another overview, we receive approximately $50,000 to $60,000 from this fund annually, and that fund goes to help offset costs related to vehicle abatement programs in the city. The ballot measure, if put on the ballot, does require a 2/3 majority, and it will be put on the ballot in 23-24 unless the legislative measures that Councilmember Miller was talking to take effect. Here's just the breakdown. So the cost of our participation in the ballot measure is the same, or is used by the same formula as the cost of how we receive fund allocation. So we generally receive 4% of the overall allocation of monies. So our cost to participate is approximately 4%, or $11,807. So with that, due to the significantly lower cost, city manager intends to enter into an agreement with the county to support a measure if placed on the ballot. And we wanted to make sure that this council had that updated information since we had presented to you earlier. And that is it.
You know where the other cities stand, Chief?
The majority of the participants have already signed the agreement, and we'll have that sent over tomorrow, and it appears everybody involved is participating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, hold
Oh,
on,
wait,
come back,
what?
come back.
Sorry. Councilmember Daniels has a question.
Okay.
Just procedurally, didn't I, maybe I'm got my memory wrong here, but didn't we vote not to support this?
There was actually not a vote. This was originally just an update to let you know that they were looking at doing this. The SABSA board wanted a straw poll of the involved agencies to see who would be open to committing to go forward. At that time, it was simply a discussion, so no vote or resolution was actually taken.
And Brad, I think I recall part of our conditions, because we didn't have consensus on it, was that everybody else join in. We weren't going to just step forward and pay all the money.
And bring down the cost.
Right. So,
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I supported it then. I just support it now. It's fine, but I just thought we had taken a vote, but I wanted to make sure we hadn't done that and needed to do another vote. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is city manager items.
Not this evening. Thank you.
Next item is items requested by council members or future agenda items.
Anything? Okay. Last item. We adjourn.